Howdy EHRD 491 students. The purpose of this video is to talk to you a little bit about action research and then to go through an action research article with you. So let me start by actually defining what is action research. Action research takes place in the field. So whether you are an employee at a company or in charge of HR at a company, you're a school teacher. The example of the article we're going to look at, this young man teaches within the correction facility. And so action research is in the field, and its purpose is to answer a real world question specific to the location that it is actually undertaken at. So if it were within an organization, and that organization is Texas A&M University, then we're trying to answer a question that is specific to A&M. In this case, he is looking at a particular group of individuals within his jail system, so a rural county jail, and he's looking at their perception of opportunities for educational programs, etc. So what are their needs versus what they actually are being able to offer. So the specific purpose of action research, again, is to answer a real-world question by a practitioner within a specific setting. Now, having said that, in some instances, and in most instances, particularly those action articles that you might read, there is enough control and stringency by the researcher to be able to get those articles published. But it's different from kind of what we've been looking at in terms of our quantitative and qualitative, because certainly those the articles that we've read, whether it's a test article or one of the reviews that I've done with the voiceovers, those particular research studies were undertaken to gain valuable knowledge at the particular site, but then to also be able to generalize beyond whether it was a hospital setting or a certain organization. So the purpose of action research is to answer a real-world question in a real-world setting, typically conducted by a practitioner, not necessarily with the idea of generalizing beyond that area, but certainly can be generalized if there's enough stringency. And those would be the action research articles that you would actually read, like the one that you see in front of you. So let's take a look at this article. A couple of things that I would say, and I know I contrasted this for the qualitative article, but if you just look at this article, it probably doesn't look any different than any of the other articles that we've already seen in terms of it has a title, it has an author, it has an abstract. And so, it doesn't. There's no indication that it is an action research article until you read the first sentence. So again, it has enough of the control and use of the scientific method and measurable variables that it was and it was publishable. But again, it just looks like any other article that we might see. So again, title, author, abstract, and then in this case the author uses the term introduction. I am in favor of using the term introduction, but let's look at a couple of things here. He kind of introduces you to his problem. There's only, as I recall, and just glancing down, only one item in here that he references anything. For our purposes, this is going to be probably the article that you are going to most likely match your proposal to. So pay attention to this article. Again, in his introduction, he is just introducing you to his problem. What I would suggest, and what we're going to use, is the term introduction, and for our purposes it will take the place of what he has labeled review of literature. And so let's take a quick glance at the number of paragraphs within his, what he calls literature review, what I'm going to call introduction, but there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5 paragraphs. And so when we get to the point where you're looking at the instructions for the your proposal, one of the things that I say in there is that you'll have 5 to 7 paragraphs within your introduction. And again, he uses the term literature review, same thing. What you'll notice in here, though, is that he does have items that are referenced. So throughout here you'll see referenced material, and again, that's where I would expect to see referenced material in your proposal. Again, the idea that you want to think about in terms of a good review of literature is that upside down triangle. So start out very broad and then narrow your focus. And so again, the principal stakeholder in correctional education is neither the corrections administration nor the instructor nor the instructor's employer. Rather, the most meaningful education is grounded in the philosophy that students should be regarded as the primary stakeholders. And so again, very, very, very general statement. And then he starts narrowing down his focus. So he provides some statistics, talks about the need for identifying what people are interested in studying. And if you get down to the very end of this, the current study investigates inmate perception of programs by directly inquiring about satisfaction levels. And so again, it would be expected that at the end of your review of literature or your introduction that you would then state what is the purpose of your study. So I think this is a pretty good and well written introduction or review of literature. And the nice thing also that's good for you guys is that not a lot of theoretical background and theoretical perspective. Very much reader friendly, if you will, particularly maybe compared to some of the other articles that we've looked at this semester. The second section that he talks about is his method section. When we get to our proposal, you're going to actually have 2 method sections. One is quantitative methodology, the other is qualitative methodology. In this case, he only did quantitative methodology, so he didn't really have that quantitative in front of it. But it does contain the 3 sections that you're going to be utilizing and writing about: participants, what he calls apparatus, which I would call instrument actually, and then procedure. And the good news for you guys is that you've already written a participant section, and you've already written a instrument section. The procedure section is the one that will be new and different to you. So again, as a review, because this should be a review for you, in the participant section you talk about, who were the participants, how were they selected, what criterion was it that they had, to be able to be in the study. And because this is past tense, he is able to give you some summary information about the participants in his study. When you go into your internship and you begin to actually collect, or you have collected your data, and you're writing your report that you'll submit for Dr. Gundy, then you can obviously change the tense to past tense, and then you can provide some of this summary information. The next section, again, he calls apparatus. I would say it's an instrument section, but again here, what is the name of the instrument, who authored it, what does it measure? You can see a little bit about some of those items in here. Here's our Likert scale questions. Other things that you might expect to see are how do you score it, what do the scores mean, and I think in this case he didn't really have anything that got added up for a composite score, so you won't really see that in here, but you guys did for your communication survey, so you should be familiar with actually writing that. Notice too that he provides a copy of the survey in Appendix A, and that will be something that you will do in your proposal. And then the next section that we'll talk about is the procedure section. And I always tell students, this is like, how would you, if you had to write out how to tell someone to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, that's kind of really what the procedure section does. So this is how he actually conducted the study. So the participant section, very specific to the participants, instrument section, what paper, in this case, what paper and pencil test did he give out. But then the procedure is everything that he did to actually conduct the study. And because he didn't really manipulate anything here, it was, a lot of this is how did he try to get subjects that wanted your opinion, posters put up, and then this is how they came into the room and how he distributed the surveys, and then a little bit more about what he did with the surveys afterwards in terms of analyses, etc. So the good news for you guys is you will add a qualitative methodology section to what would be essentially the up to this point what we've seen in this article, and then that will be all you will do for your proposal. Now when you do go into your internship and you do collect the data, I would hang on to this article maybe because this gives you a pretty good idea of how to write a results section. You wrote a small one for your quantitative data collection one where you did a t-test. But the nice thing, and the thing I wanted to point out in action research, is that you typically see very low levels and easy to understand statistics. So you typically might see t-tests, you'll certainly see are likely to see correlation coefficients, certainly means and standard deviations, frequencies with which items were seen. One statistical technique that he used that I don't talk about in our class is chi-square, but again that's a very low level statistical test, and so it's very likely that you might not even see that in some of the action articles that you might come across. So again, there shouldn't be, maybe other than the chi-square, nothing in here should be anything that's real difficult to ascertain or understand. And then lastly, he does have a conclusion and then some discussion. And again, very much like our quantitative and qualitative articles that we've already seen, you can see, it follows that same pattern all the way through. He talks about some implications after that, and almost at the end here, but notice the references here. Again, very little, if any, information actually coming from the internet. This first one is probably some of those statistics that he provided, but pretty much everything else either came from a journal or a textbook. So again, remember that. Again, here's some dropout prevention that came from a website. So those are the types of things that you would expect to come from websites, not information about the best practices types of things. Here's his personal information, and again you can see that he is someone that works in the prison system, and then here is a copy of his instrument. And the last thing on here is what's called an informed consent, which he had to do because he was getting information from human subjects. So that would be something, if you were doing this away from your internship, you would need to do this because you're doing your data collection as part of a class assignment. You guys don't actually have to do the informed consent. But again, you will be providing a copy of your questionnaire with your proposal when you turn it in to me here in a short period of time.